Do you see what he says to do with our speech? Do you see what he says about singing and hymns and songs? And that? Do you see what he says in those last 3 verses that we read? He says, and be thankful. In verse 15, the end, and be thankful. Verse 16, with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Verse 17, giving thanks to the Father through him. We need to have a heart of thankfulness. This is what they didn't do in Romans chapter 1, that people recognized God. They realized that they were not the creator, and they recognized God, but they did not thank God as God. They didn't recognize that they should be thankful that they have a great God. At the end of Psalm 19, it says this, and very fitting, as it talks about the heavens declaring the glory of God, and that how David is now declaring his righteousness and his character and his attributes. In verse 14 it says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. The heart is connected with the mouth. And so if we need to have hearts of thankfulness, that as we set things before us so our heart can take a grasp on it, we look at the cup and say it's not half empty, and look at all the things that we don't have, but we look and say, oh no, it's half full. This is what my God has blessed me with. And we're thankful to him. And when we have hearts of thankfulness, and that fills us up, and that overflows, and we talk with one another, and we're thankful to our God. And then you'll see in the verses that we read, verse 14, and above all these put on love, which binds together, everything together in perfect harmony. We need to be edifying in our speech. We need to be encouraging in our speech, especially within these 4 walls. He talks about how God is bringing everything together. In verse 11, where he says there's no Jew or Greek or circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian or slave or free, but Christ is all in all. We learn from Ephesians chapter 2 that Christ is bringing the church, and he takes them from all nations and all tribes and tongues, and he's bringing them together into one covenant people, one church. And there was a lot of problems between the Jews and the Gentiles. We're learning that in the Acts study. And how we saw that conflict going back and forth. But he's just like, you put all of that aside. Because you know what? God is a God of variance. He's a God of that. He doesn't make any 2 of us the same, does he? We all see things differently. And if I see things differently than you do, my speech should not be that of, well, I can't believe that they did that. Why would they do that? Or I don't see why they made that decision. I wouldn't make that decision. It's like, I think sometimes in our minds we think this, that we think that we're standing next to God and saying, look at all the people and all the foolish decisions that they're making. You see that, God? Well, God, good thing that God doesn't look at us that way. You know how he looks at us? He sent his son to die on the cross for us, shed his blood for us. So that when we're talking and we're talking down, or our hearts are looking down at our fellow believers, our brothers and sisters, you know what we're doing? We're talking against him. It talks about in Ephesians how the church is the bride of Christ. We just learned in Acts how it was when Paul's on his way as he was Saul, and he's on his road to Damascus, and he gets knocked off his horse, and he sees the blinding light in Acts chapter 9, and he's just like, Lord, who are you? And he's like, I am Jesus Christ, whom you are persecuting. Saul could have said, well, I'm persecuting the church. But no, Christ identified himself with his church. And so that if we're talking badly about another brother or sister, we're talking badly about Christ. That's how he looks at it.